everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers Experience podcast with myself, Adam Strong. And I am super pumped and super excited. We have another fun-packed show, and today doesn't disappoint, I have to admit. This gentleman who we're going to be speaking to very, very shortly, it's a real privilege because we hanged out on Clubhouse a few times. We engaged in some conversations. Believe it or not, some of my clients are even members of this organization, which I'm going to mention very, very shortly. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, week, month, whenever you're listening to this. I'm going to get straight into this. So who is our big guest today? His name is Dr. Ivan Misner. Now, if you don't know who Dr. Ivan Misner is, he's the founder and chief visionary officer for the world's largest business networking organization in the world, which is called Business Network International, or BNI for short. I was going to say, last year alone, even though it was the pandemic, they generated over 12.4 million referrals between its members, generating more than $18.6 billion worth of business for its members. Ivan is a New York Times bestselling author. He's published 26 different books, and he's also seen as this most senior authority in the world of networking. He's also been awarded many different awards, such as the Humanitarian of the Year award by the Red Cross, and also was the recipient of the John Maxwell Leadership Award. I love John Maxwell. He's a great guy, fantastic, and really looking forward to some of our conversations today. What we're going to be talking about today, guys, is we're going to be talking a little bit about tribes and leadership. So a bit different in terms of conversation. We're going to be talking a little bit about how to build a tribe, how BNI's built a tribe, and how you can implement some of the strategies, tactics, and tools that Ivan's going to be teaching us today, and how you can implement it into your business. So without further ado, Dr. Ivan Misner, woo! Oh, there we go.
Hello, hey. It's great to be on. Thank you so much.
It's great to have you. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. It's a little cold here in Austin, Texas. You think of it as very hot, but it's actually snowing here in Austin.
Does that really happen in Texas? That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
I actually saw about that. Believe it or not, we've actually got snow here. But I'm in Sweden, so it's kind of like, novel for this time of the year and whatever it is. So, but listen, great to have you. First of all, I wanted to say, great privilege to be on here with you, of course. And we've had a lot of fun on Clubhouse and hanging out in the Entrepreneurs and Leaders Club. For you guys that don't know about that, the Entrepreneurs and Leaders Club is a great tribe of people that I built a great community on Clubhouse with. And Ivan was one of those interviewees and we had some great conversations and stuff like that. So now I know that we've got some comments coming through in the comments section. And I know that for you guys that are listening in live, if you are listening to us live, please do me a favor, accept the T's and the C's, which is the StreamYard thing around. And for you guys that listen to recording, hopefully you've got your pens and paper handy, because normally when Ivan does these interviews, he's normally talking a lot about networking. And we're going to be talking about something a little bit different today. By the way, I wanted to just ask you, how was your trip to Antarctica?
It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. When people talk about Antarctica and they say it's a desert, it is a desert. There is no vegetation on Antarctica. And, and people say, did you see penguins? It's like, well, I didn't see dozens. I didn't see hundreds. I didn't see thousands. I probably saw tens of thousands.
Oh my gosh.
Penguins, because we stopped at a number of islands along the way. An incredible experience. I would highly recommend it. However, crossing the Drake Passage, wow, it's rough. I mean, we were in 30-foot swells, and
wow,
people, they were popping Dramamine like candy.
That's great. What was the purpose of the trip, just out of curiosity?
For fun.
For fun? That's kind of what it's about, right? Have business, have fun, right? Oh, wait, you're going on holiday this month. Oh, I'm going to Antarctica. What? Antarctica?
There was also a solar eclipse that we saw from the ocean.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it was a 15-day cruise on a ice qualified, not an icebreaker, but an ice qualified ship. and we did trips out to the land. Now, it's rugged. There are no facilities at all. I mean, you get in a Zodiac boat. They take you to the beach. You step out in the ocean and walk onto the beach, and then explore within a limited area. An amazing experience. I'd highly recommend it.
I guess it was, it's not one of those holiday destinations that I put on my bucket list, of course, but
I prefer different kinds of beaches.
Right, exactly. I'm thinking maybe Hawaii is kind of more suited to you, but I guess you kind of live in the US, so Hawaii is not really much of a kind of a destination as such.
Oh, it's wonderful. I've been there many times.
Fantastic. Well, listen, that it was great, because I know that when we were speaking in I think it was November or October, you mentioned that, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, a holiday with the penguins. Great stuff. All right, whatever floats your boat. It's all cool. All right, well, listen, I wanted to kind of like really drive into this, because I know we've got some engagement as well, which I know that are BNI members, by the way. So we thank you for your contributions, and I want to give a big shout out to one of my clients, Sarah Franklin, and she says hi. She's based in the UK. I think she was also one of our contributing authors, by the way, Ivan, in our best-selling book called Play the Game. So she just wanted to say hi, and hopefully you've received her copy.
Hey, Sarah.
So anyway, I wanted to just jump in here because, one of the things that I found over the last couple of years, the importance of community, right? And how like you can leverage community, but more specifically, I want to talk a little bit about tribes. Now, I know that back in 1985, when you effectively started up BNI, right? I wanted to kind of get your perspective of what a tribe is, and how has BNI created a kind of tribal concept, and in kind of building the organization to how it is today.
Yeah, well, to me, a tribe is a community. They're people that have similar core values, or operate on a basis of similar core values. And, those who are successful participants in that tribe live those core values. And they generally have, and certainly if you're talking about a business like BNI, they have a mission, they have a vision, and the tribe is all working towards that mission and vision. And so it's really about, like I said, a community of people working together because the sum of the whole can be greater than the individual parts.
True.
That the tribe working together can create much more than anyone can do on their own.
Love it. Love it. And how do you, back in kind of, sort of the mid 80s and stuff, you kind of, I guess you would never imagined it as being as big as it is today, potentially. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. I don't know. But no. What's the backstory about being? I know that I don't really know so much about the backstory. I know that you had a vision with you and your wife, but what was kind of going through in the mid 80s?
Well, actually, I met my wife in BNI, so she was not there in the very beginning.
So, but yeah, love to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so like I said, I met my wife in BNI. She was a member of a chapter. I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization, but I started BNI because I went to networks that I thought were mercenary, and everyone was selling to me. And I went to networks that I thought were too social. It was just happy hour and hors d'oeuvres. I wanted a network that had a focus on business, but wasn't mercenary, and was relational, but not totally social. And so I formed one group, and that's all I had in mind, because I was a management consultant. And someone came and said, "Hey, would you help me open up a second group?" And I told her, "No, this isn't what I do." And she said, "Well, this is kind of consulting." And she talked me into it. And then people came to that group and they asked me to open up one. And so my Brody moment, and I'll explain that, my Brody moment came in December of that year. So I opened in January of 1985. In December of 1985, about 11 and a half months after, I always take a week off between Christmas and New Year's to reflect.
Right.
And that week, that year, I was like, what the heck just happened? This was not part of my, I had 20 chapters. I opened 20 groups by accident.
20 groups in 11 months?
11 and a half months, yeah. I had 20
That's
groups.
insane. Wow.
It is. It is. And I didn't have a plan. And that's when I realized that we don't teach this in colleges and universities anywhere in the world.
Right.
And that people really need it. Now, here's why I call it the Brody moment. Do you remember the movie Jaws?
I do remember the name. Yeah,
Okay.
I love that movie. Fantastic.
Well, the sheriff, he was Sheriff Brody.
Right.
And remember the scene? It's so memorable, where he's throwing out chum into the water, and for the first time ever, someone other than the people that the shark attacked, he saw the shark. It came up, and he was shocked, and he walked in to the captain's area, and he said, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." And that was my Brody moment, was in December, the last week of December 1985, where I realized I'm going to need a bigger boat. That I have struck a chord that I didn't expect, and that I needed to create a plan. And that's when I started to create the plan to scale BNI. We now have 10,600 chapters in more than 70 countries around the world, with over 286,000 paying members.
That's insane. Where did you start? Was that in California?
It was, yeah. It was in Southern California, LA County.
Right. That's cool. That's good. And when it came to, I mean, you obviously could have managed all 20 chapters. I guess you had people running them. Or, I mean, what was the initial?
No, I was managing them, but it was clear to me that I could not manage anymore, and that I was managing too many, because I was running a consulting business still. I was even teaching at a university. So I'm running a consulting business. I'm teaching part-time at a university, and I got this crazy thing called BNI. And I realized I couldn't do all three. And so I started to lay the groundwork to sell my consulting business, which took a couple of years. And I started hiring people. And that's where, you're going to need a bigger boat came in, because I realized that I need more people.
Yeah.
More people.
When
means,
when that initial moment happened, what was the kind of, I don't know if it was a belief system where you thought, you know what, I'm onto something here. It's like, and then there's kind of like, the power of letting go, which I guess, I don't know about you, but I find it very difficult letting go, especially if you brought up a consultancy business. Then you got BNI. You loved it?
Yeah.
Was it hard to let go?
It was, but here's the thing that I thought would be true at the end of 1985, and I knew was true by 1989, where I take it back. It was 88. I sold the consulting business. I recognized that as a consultant, because I worked with medium-sized companies, maybe some small companies, I could maybe help 100 people. Maybe 5 clients, because I was working with mostly small businesses, mid-sized businesses.
Right.
But I thought BNI, I might be able to help thousands of people. I might be able to really make a difference, or help make a difference for thousands of people. Now it's hundreds of thousands of people. And so that was really the thing, was I love consulting, but I have an opportunity to make a bigger impact in the world. And I gravitated to it. When I sold my consulting business, I took a cut in income, because I made good money as a management consultant. And I took a pretty big cut in income when I sold the consulting business and started doing BNI.
Interesting.
Full time.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Full time, of course. Yeah, of course. Okay, that makes sense. Now, I know that I was going to say, the whole kind of concept of tribes and communities, and they are very different in their own unique setting. But I know that I used to be a BNI member many years ago. I remember even building up a chapter, and I know we've got people listening in live as well and things like that. But we don't really talk so much about how you built BNI using a tribal concept, like from a leadership perspective, internally within the organization. Because I mean, the organization's franchised right now, isn't it? I mean, it didn't start off as a franchise, did it?
No.
When did you shift that to the franchise model? When was it kind of like, oh wow, this is like, I'd love to know what your thoughts are and kind of where that shift was.
The official shift took place in 91, but I started thinking about it conceptually earlier. I read a book around 1980, 85, 86, 87, called The E-Myth
Oh
by
yes,
Michael Gerber.
Michael Gerber. Yep.
Yeah, and in the E-Myth, he talked about the fact that you should write everything down as though you plan on franchising your business, even if you have no intention of ever franchising your business. I thought that was good advice, so I started writing everything down. If nothing else, to teach the employees and independent contractors how to do what it was that we were doing, because learning is a leaky bucket process. If you teach me something, some of the information leaks out, and when I teach somebody else something, that same thing, more information leaks out. And when you have enough layers, you end up losing a lot of the information. And so writing it down helped to plug the leaks. By the way, I was talking about this on an interview many years ago, and I mentioned Michael, and guess who called me the next day?
Michael.
Yeah. He called me and he said, hey, I was in my car listening, because we're talking about 15, 20 years ago. He said, I was in my car listening to an interview and you came on, and I want to thank you for referring the E-Myth, because by that time the book was 15 years old,
right,
or maybe 20 years old. So he and I have become really good friends. I love Michael. He's an amazing guy. So when by 1989, just a few years later, I thought, well, wait a minute. Why can't I franchise? I mean, I didn't plan on it, but why can't I? I got the manuals. I got the processes. I have the system. And so by 89, I started doing things that would enable me to franchise, like trademark the company name, which was a different name back then. And so I needed a trademark. I needed a name that was trademarkable. Then I needed to do all of the legal stuff and then make an offering. So the first franchise was in 1991.
In the United States?
In the United States. I didn't open up outside the United States until 1995.
Okay. So that's 10 years after the initial launch. And then by that time, how many states and chapters were you in?
By 95, we probably had maybe it was under 1,000 chapters, maybe. Well, here, actually, I can tell you is by 1996 we had 500 chapters.
Damn.
And I know that number because people around people in the early 2000s were saying, hasn't the internet affected BNI? And I'd say, yeah, it's affected it dramatically. And they would nod and go, oh yeah, I'm not surprised. Said, well, let me explain. In our first 11 years, we opened 500 groups. From 1985 to 1996, 500 groups. In the next 11 years, from 1997 to 2008, we opened 5,000 groups.
Wow, that's insane.
So yes, the internet has affected BNI. And so, yeah, it was, I don't know how I got off into that, but yeah, we had 500 chapters by about 1995. And I remember the first country we opened outside of the United States was Canada. This is an absolutely true story. I'm not making this up. It's not a joke.
Go for it.
I was going to launch 2 chapters. I had a director up there. I was going to launch 2 chapters. We had them all ready to go. We did a little mixer where everybody could meet me and talk to me before the launch of the 2 chapters. And it was the evening before, and I had a drink, and there was a woman standing in a corner. And so I strike up a conversation with her, and nobody's around. And I go, look, I'm actually a little bit nervous about opening up in another country. This is the first country outside the United States. Do you think this will work in Canada? And Adam, I swear to you, she said, oh, she was a little older than me. She said, oh, honey, Canadians are basically Americans with cheap healthcare and no guns. This will go great here in Canada. And I laughed, and she made me, whether it's true or not, I think it probably is kind of true.
It is.
But whether it's true or not, it really relaxed me, and so we kicked off in Canada. And from Canada, we got a referral to the United Kingdom, and from the United Kingdom, it just went worldwide.
Absolutely. For you guys that are obviously listening in from Canada, I hope you find that joke enlightening. I certainly
Wasn't a
did.
joke. It was a true
That's a joke.
story.
It's a true story, exactly. But it's so funny anyway. I'd love to know more, because I know that you also was the recipient of the John Maxwell thing, and I love John Maxwell. He's a
Amazing man.
true amazing man, absolutely pioneering what he does. Tell me more about how I suppose, how did you evolve as a leader over the last sort of, I don't know, 30 odd years from the time that you founded BNI? You must have gone through some massive shifts from a leadership perspective. Huge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, luckily, I did my graduate work at the University of Southern California, and luckily I had an opportunity to study under Warren Bennis. And Warren Bennis was, in his day, the John Maxwell of leadership.
Right.
If you look up any book in the, I would say 70s to the 90s,
Okay.
Bennis is highly recognized. And he probably wrote most of the best-selling books on leadership. So he was on my doctoral committee at USC. And so I was able to study under him. And I learned some really important lessons, two of which I carry, absolutely, many of which I've carried forward, but two really resonate with me. The first is contextual intelligence. And he talked to me about the importance of a leader, that leadership is not just it's not just a set of characteristics. Like, these are the characteristics of a good leader. And as a matter of fact, I did a paper on the characteristics of a good leader, and he tore it apart. And I was asking him why. And so he gave me a whole list of, he started with my list, and he said, okay, that's fine. And then he gave me another list, and he said, are these potentially good leaders? And I said, yes. And then he gave me a whole other list. He said, are these good leaders? And I said, well, yes. And he said, characteristics have little to do with being a great leader. It's about learning how to adapt your behavioral style to become a good leader. And there are great leaders that are introverts, and there are great leaders that are extroverts, and everything in between, and all of the different behaviors. So it got me to rethink the characteristics are kind of secondary to other things. And this is where he led into then contextual intelligence. He said, this is way more important, is whatever style of leadership you have to understand the context of the challenge. And if you don't understand the context, where it's coming from, then you can't lead effectively. The second thing that he taught me, which was really important, was adaptive capacity. The ability to adapt to the context of the challenge. And if you are unable to lead an organization and adapt, you will fail. And that has really hit home with me. And I've tried to apply that throughout my career. BNI, let's take BNI, 2020. In 2020, we had just hit 10,000 chapters.
Damn.
And COVID hit.
Yep.
Now I want you to think, 10,000 groups of people who meet in person every week. People say their business was totally disrupted. Our business was totally disrupted. 10,000 weekly meetings. This is where adaptive capacity comes into play, and I can't take credit for it. It was our CEO. Now, granted, I was there every step of the way, but he really led the transition from 10,000 in-person meetings every week to 10,000 online meetings every week. And at the time of this interview that we're doing now, we've got a combination. We have some that are still online. We have some that are hybrid, some in person, some online, and some that are 100% in person, where it is safe to do that. And that's an example of adaptive contextual intelligence and adaptive capacity.
Love it. It's interesting because when you brought that up, actually, I was thinking to myself, how are organizations like BNI, how they're going to adapt to the change? Because I didn't see that shift. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm like, they've been around for a number of years. This could be the end. I'm sure it
Yeah.
was, you know, that was kind of what I thought. That was my perception. I don't
Well,
know.
I gotta tell you, I never thought it was the end, and here's why.
Go on.
Because I wrote an article for Entrepreneur
Uh-huh.
in 2018, entrepreneur.com. In
Yes.
2018, I wrote an article that said the future of face-to-face is online.
Yep. Interesting.
And now I didn't see COVID coming. My CEO did. I didn't. But what I said is the technology is advancing at such a fast pace, and here's the evidence of it, that within 10 years, within 5 to 10 years, we are going to transition most networking to an online, some type of online platform, because you've got mixed reality, holographic imaging. I joked around saying, someday we're going to have these holographic images like in Star Wars, where you have the Jedi Knights. There's a real Jedi and a couple of holographic images. And towards the end of the article, I said, if we get to that point, I want to be Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
I want to be Yoda.
So I wrote that in 2018. So we knew that it was coming. We didn't know that it was coming because of COVID. But the fact that we conceptually understood that the technology was changing, I think helped us make that transition from at the management level easier.
Right.
Getting members on was a little more difficult because we had some members, little gray hair like I have, and they were really resistant. I had one guy who was like, I am not going to move to online meetings. And I remember saying to him, and this was like the writing was on the wall. People were starting to go out of business. And I said, look, you can go online or not go online.
Exactly.
You can go online and save your business, or you can not go online and go out of business.
Yep.
It's up to you.
Exactly.
I can't make you go to the meetings, but they're going online. So they're going to go with you or without you. What I felt like saying was, buck up, Buttercup. I didn't say that. But that's what I felt like saying. And to his credit, by the way, he did go online and he said it saved his business.
It's resistance to change, more than anything. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, by the way, for you, for that person that we're talking about, we won't name you for professionalism. But if you're listening to this, I'm sure you're having a laugh right now. But anyway, actually, interestingly enough, and there's really big talk at the moment, Ivan, around the whole kind of metaverse thing as well. And I'm sure you've probably got plans maybe in the future around kind of how BNI is going to transition into the metaverse and stuff. That's kind of exciting. I don't know about where you thought about that.
Well, I think, we're really keeping our eyes on that kind of technology because that is the wave of the future. Yeah. And, we have to make that transition when the technology is there. Technology to the point where, everybody has access to it and almost everybody is using it. And, if you go back in time, I remember in the early 70s, I had a high school buddy, and cassette voicemail machines had just come out.
You mean like a fax machine?
No, cassette. I mean, it wasn't even cassette. The first one I had was a reel-to-reel phone messaging where you could leave.
Oh, wow. That's way before my time, by the way.
Yeah, that was like 1973. And I remember a buddy of mine saying, these machines are so weird. This is before I had one even. He said, these machines are so weird. Who's going to leave their voice on this machine? And just 2 years later, by 74, 75, I had a friend saying, I don't get it. I'm calling my friend. He doesn't have a tape machine. Everybody's got a tape machine. Why doesn't he have a tape machine? So within this 2-year period, all of a sudden the technology advanced and with it, people were drawn along. Email. I remember email in the 90s where people were going, or no, before that, fax machines. I'm guilty of that one. Why would I fax something? That's so expensive to buy one. Just FedEx it overnight. And then, finally I realized you got to have a fax machine. And then it was email. People didn't have email. What is it? Then all of a sudden people, because the technology advanced. Now, look at us right now, Adam.
Right.
Broadband internet. This was unheard of 10 years ago. To do an interview on the internet
live, which is insane.
Yeah. So the technology got to a point where
Yep.
it was easy for people to make the transition. That's what needs to happen. When the technology starts to really get there, I don't want to be disrupted by technology. I want to lead the disruption
I love it.
with
Oh,
technology.
by the way, I just want to show you this. I want to show you this. Watch this. Some of us still have a fax machine.
Good for
By the
you.
way, whoever that was, you need to put your name in the chat box because we don't know who you are. It just says Facebook user, but I just love that. You're going to get some grief, by the way, whoever that is. That's so funny. I know back in when you created BNI back in the 80s, tell us a little bit more about the vision. I mean, did you have a vision back in the 80s? How has it kind of, I mean, evolved over the last, 40, 35 years? Because, it has evolved. You've evolved as a person, but I'd love to know more about that.
Okay, so I just did another interview. I want to make sure I didn't talk about the Brody moment with you yet, have I?
No, we did that at the beginning.
We did that again. Okay, so
Yeah.
I talked about it in the previous interview as well. So that my Brody moment was where I then realized I needed to scale the business. So I sat down and I did a plan. By the middle of 1986, so a year and a half into it, about 6 months after I decided to scale, I went to the library. There was no internet in 1986. If you wanted to do research, you had to go to the library. So luckily I was teaching and I was still working on my doctoral degree. And so I went to libraries to do research, to check out books and get reference books to figure out just how many chapters would it be possible for BNI to have someday.
Sure.
And after all the calculations I did, I came to the conclusion that this is June of 1986, a year and 6 months after I started BNI.
Yeah.
I came to the conclusion that we could possibly have 10,000 chapters someday.
Dang.
And I remember telling that to a friend of mine, and he looked at me and he said, and how many chapters do you have now, Ivan? I said, 30. He said, you have 30 groups. And you think you can have 10,000? I said, yeah, I think I can. And the numbers are definitely there. And like I mentioned earlier, in 2020, we hit the 10,000 chapter mark.
Wow. I'm sure he's swallowing his words right now, listening to this, because yeah, it's interesting. What would you say? Like, I know that from when you obviously franchised the business, which was 6 years later, I'd love to know how you structured the business in a way to set up for success, because it's a very different model, the franchise model, obviously. From a leadership perspective, did you ever feel like you were going to lose control of the brand and the vision of everything, when you franchise it? Was there a lot of things going through your head? I'd love to know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I mean, you do lose some control, but at the same time, you empower people. And
Right.
So it's a balancing act between losing some control and empowering people. And, I had one of my franchises one day say to me, especially, this was about 20 years ago, and we were just so wide-eyed with this, how this thing was growing. And he said to me, some days it's got to feel like everybody in BNI is running in this direction, and you're running behind them going, everybody move to the left, move to the right, everybody straight. Don't, no, you're getting out of bounds. Come on in. And honestly, it really felt like that. It felt like I was, constantly saying, come on, get in bounds, get in bounds. Yeah. And you can't, when you have a franchise, and frankly, I think you can't do this with employees either, but particularly with a franchise, you can't just tell people what to do. It's because I said so. They don't buy it. So I'll tell you, it was not only my leadership training with Warren, but my mom. My mom was an amazing woman.
Wow.
When I was 13 years old, she gave me this paperweight. I'll read it to you. And she gave it to me because I was running for student council. And she said, honey, I love you. You're not going to get elected to anything if you don't learn how to work with people better. You are a bull in a china shop. You just knock people over. And she said, she gave me this paperweight that's on my desk to this day. It says, diplomacy is the art of letting someone else have your way. And she said, this is about collaboration, not manipulation. It's about learning how to work with people, not just roll them over. And, it's a lesson that I constantly have to remind myself about, because it's so much easier to just, smack them up the side of the head, metaphorically, of course, and say, do it my way. But that's not leadership, that's assault. And so,
Absolutely.
you got to learn how to get people to follow an idea. And that takes some diplomacy.
It does. And, it's interesting because, I mean, listen, I've done thousands of these interviews and interviewed millionaires and billionaires of people like yourself. And it's interesting how there seems to be this same commentary around, about leadership, about vision, and about what does it take to build an organization, that goes to scale. And it's just really fascinating how everyone seems to come up with the same common patterns of, that, do you know what I mean? It's like, I was speaking with Gary Ridge, who was our speaker actually in our private inner circle group. And, he's such a humble gentleman. He's based in San Diego, California, actually. And he's the CEO of WD-40. And he just gave some really good points, very similar to what you've been talking about, actually, about, following the idea and getting them excited and hiring people that are better than you, which I think is really important. So I think that you made some really, really good points. I love that.
You just made two comments there that I'd love to respond to. One was the humility. I really think that humble people don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less.
Right.
And it's about supporting your team as much as possible. The other thing is about themes for success. And I probably haven't talked about what, in my opinion, is the most important, and that is organizational culture. I think culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is the secret sauce to a successful organization. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if you have a bad culture, you're not going to be successful. If you have a great culture and a decent strategy, you can be successful. If you have a great culture and a great strategy, you are the industry leader. Culture is the secret sauce to a really successful organization, and maintaining that culture, I think, is challenging and critical for a successful long-running company. And we've been around 37 years now.
It's a long time.
And by the way, 37 years, and here's an interesting fact. 37 consecutive years of growth. Not one year was a down year from the previous year. Some, the last 2 years were flatter, but we have 37 years of consecutive growth. There are very few, if any, companies I know of that can say they have 37 years of consecutive growth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of any, in fact, not off the top of my head anyway, but it's a great achievement. And I mean, you must be very proud of what you've achieved. And I'm sure there's your mom looking down at you thinking, "Oh, we're so proud of you, Ivan." And
she went to a number of BNI events. She saw it. And yeah, she was. And I am proud, but I'm also, we talked about humility. I'm also humbled by what it's become, because, there are so many people today more than ever. People need their network. They need their community, their tribe. And so what makes me feel great is hearing people who say to me, I'm in business today because my community, my group, held me together during these challenging times. They helped support me and not only survive, but thrive during these incredibly challenging times. And that's humbling.
Yep, I agree. I think it's fantastic. What in terms of, I know you talked about humility. I'd love to talk a little bit about candor, because I think Jack Welch talks about that. The former CEO of General Electric. He talks about the importance of candor. What's your thoughts on candor, and how should leaders, embrace the formality of candor?
Well, I think transparency, I would, if you define candor as transparency, I would say it's really important. One of the largest projects that I ever undertook while I was running the company, I don't run the day-to-day operations anymore. I'm sort of the Colonel Sanders of BNI. I'm the spokesperson. But one of the biggest projects that I undertook when I was running the company was BNI Connect, which is our online platform, where we transitioned, a paper-based system to online, which we're coming up on 11 years that's happened. I think if we had not been almost totally transparent, and I say almost only because the kinds of things we didn't share were people's salaries.
Yes,
so
of course.
anything that was HR related, we didn't share. But other than that, we were 100% transparent. I showed expenses, I showed budgets, I showed the plans. We were virtually completely transparent in that project, and I think that kind of transparency it settles people.
I agree.
It calms the tribe because there's nothing hiding. And when people start, saying, "Well, you're not showing this," then okay, fine, here it is. Here's that. Well, what about this? Well, here's that. At some point people go, "Ken, just leave the guy alone. He's showing us everything. What's wrong with you?" And when peers start saying, "Just leave the guy alone. He's showing you everything," that's when the transparency really kicks in.
Yeah, love it. Actually, we share a very good mutual friend, Mr. Bob Berg, who wrote he was the co-author of The Go-Giver, of course. We love Bob, right? And
love Bob. Bob is the real deal, by the way.
He is the real deal. He is the real deal.
A lot of people who speak from the stage and they're a completely different person off stage. Yeah, that's not Bob. Bob lives his values. He's a wonderful person. He's one of the few people in the world outside of a BNI director that I would recommend go speak at a conference on networking.
Yeah, and he's a truly humble character. I want a big shout out to Bob and stuff like that. But actually, believe it or not, I know, talking about his book, The Go-Giver, and then you've got the whole kind of philosophy of Giver's Gain. How did they, was the concept behind Giver's Gain similar to what Bob wrote? I mean, what was kind of your connotation behind that?
I've never asked him if Giver's Gain influenced that. I don't think so. I mean, if it did, he probably would have put it in the book,
right?
Because that's the kind of guy he is. But the concept of giving is not new, and I would say the go-getter. And I wrote a book called Giver's Gain: The BNI Story, which is available only to BNI members. It's not. I mean, it's on Amazon, but they're resales. It's not published on Amazon. And so I would say his concept of the go-giver and Giver's Gain really vertically integrate extremely well. Mine is a historical context of how this happened. His is a parable. Both are great books.
I agree. And big shout out to Bob. I'll have to message him after our call and say, hey, we've just been on the call with Ivan, and he says hi. So, but it's kind of cool. Listen, I know we're coming towards the end of our interview, and I know that you're a very pressing man, but love to know what you guys have plans for the future for BNI, because you've been around for 37 years. There's not many organizations that's been around for 37 years. I'd love to know what your plans are, and what is the legacy that you want to leave when eventually you do leave this world, which is not going to be anytime soon, but
we hope not.
We hope not. Touch wood.
So our plans, we definitely have plans. We haven't shared all of our plans yet, but I can tell you that our plans really are in the direction that we're talking about, or we have been talking about, where I wrote that article in 2018 saying that the online is the future. I see BNI becoming more and more of a platform-like program, and how that looks, we're working on. But it is going to be more and more of a platform that really gives easy access to communities. And the more that happens, I really believe that BNI, in a fraction of the time that it took to go to 286,000 members, we're going to go to 1 million members.
Wow.
And that's going to happen because of the platform concept that we're moving towards. Not completely. I am not saying face-to-face meetings are ending, okay? That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that we are going to continue to vertically integrate the technology into our process and into our system. That's our future.
Love it.
And
Love
you asked me what my legacy was. So
yes.
I'll give you the short answer and then a quote. The short answer is this: someone's life is their legacy. It's that simple. However you live your life, that's your legacy. And so I would like to think that my legacy is one of helping people and supporting people and making a difference, changing the way the world does business. But my legacy will be up to the people who survived me, and I think I've lived a life dedicated to helping people. Here's my quote. It's a variation of a quote from Jean-Paul Sartre.
Ah, yes.
We all die too soon or too late, and yet our life is complete at that moment, with a line drawn neatly under it, ready for the summing up. Your deeds in life and little more. And I believe that I have lived values and done deeds that, that I'm proud of and that I hope create a legacy for me.
Love it. Fantastic. Wow. Just before we finish, because I know we've got so many comments on whatever it has come through. So we've just got this lady, I think this is Branka actually, greetings through BNI Cyprus. There we go. Fantastic. Nice to have some Cypriots as well. Let's just quickly, very, very quickly. When is Ivan going to space?
I sure would like to know that. I signed up back in 2007, 2008, roughly. There's a video out there that I did announcing it. I started a real estate business before I started BNI, and my real estate investment company has really allowed me to do some amazing things. I happened to spend a week on Necker Island with Richard Branson just a few months ago. And it was all Virgin Galactic future astronauts that were there on the island. And of course, our question was, when? They're hoping to be able to start flying sometime this year or early next year. I am astronaut number 247, and they're going to do about 6 astronauts at a time. So that means that I'll probably be on roughly the 40th flight. So sometime next year, I would like to do it. It's going to be awesome to come down and get astronaut wings from Virgin Galactic.
Very cool. Love it.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Did Richard share his experience with about his first flights up in space? What did he say?
He said one thing that I thought was really, he loved it. It was amazing. It blew his mind. Right. It was everything that he hoped it would be, all stuff that you would expect. Here is what I didn't expect. He said, if I were to do it again, I would spend less time enamored with floating and more time looking at the earth.
Hey, that's cool.
Because the view is indescribable in person. And I'm going to take that to heart. I'm going to spend about 30 seconds, enjoying the floating, and then I'm going to stick my face in a viewport and enjoy the view.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. Love it. Listen, this has been a fantastic interview, and we've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of laughs, and I just want to say thanks very much. I really appreciate you today.
My pleasure. Anytime. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Very cool. Listen, guys, hope you've enjoyed today's episode of the Game Changers Experience. If you want to get to know more about Ivan, you can click on his links below. Check out his books as well. There's 26 of them out there. He's a New York Times bestselling author. You can go onto Amazon and all the good booksellers stores as well. And if you want to learn more about BNI, then please go onto the BNI website and check out where your nearest chapter is available. So thanks very much, Ivan. Really appreciate you today. And for you guys that are listening, thanks very much, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers. Bye-bye.